Hello. I suggest you crochet cute little wonderful flowers, roses. These are the little ones that turned out. They fit easily, simply, and quickly. Any beginner can handle knitting. They will look very nice as a decoration. This is how they look from the wrong side and from the front side. I knitted these flowers from thin cotton. In 50 grams, I have 280 meters and I used a thin 0.75 millimeters for knitting. We perform the first loop. And we'll tie a chain of 36 air loops. The first loop, the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and so on. They tied a chain of 36 air loops. Now we will tie the chain with columns without a cape. We insert the hook into the adjacent loop from the hook, grab the loop and tie the two loops together. It turns out a column without a cape. And so we will tie an air chain into each loop. One loop of the base, one column without a cape. They tied the whole chain with columns without a cape. Then we will knit the next row. We perform 5 air loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We turn the knitting to the other side, we skip 3 loops of the base, we tie a column without a cape into the 4th loop. They grabbed a loop, tied 2 loops together. Once again, we dial 5 air loops, we skip 3 loops of the base, we tie a column without a cape into the 4th. So, we will knit along the entire length of this base. We tied the arches with 5 air loops. At the end, 5 loops remain on the base. In these 5 loops we will make 2 small arches. Let's tie 3 air loops. 1, 2, 3. We skip 2 loops of the base, tie a column without a cape into the 3rd. And once again 3 air loops, and in the very first loop we will tie a column without a cape. Two small arches will be petals in the middle of the rose. Then we perform an air lifting loop, turn the knitting to the other side and tie the resulting arches. In the first arch, first we will tie a column without a cape, then we will perform a half column, 1 cape on the hook, grab the loop and tie all 3 loops with 1 loop. Then we will tie 4 columns with 1 cape. The first column with 1 cape, the second column with 1 cape, the third and fourth columns with 1 cape. Next, we will tie a column to the floor, a cape on a hook and 3 loops together, a column without a cape. The first petal turned out. We will tie a connecting column between the petals at the base. They grabbed the loop and pulled it through the main loop. In the same way, we will tie the next petal. First, a column without a cape, then a half column, for columns with 1 cape, the first, second, third and fourth. A half column, a column without a cape and a connecting column. The following arches are slightly larger, and in them we will knit a larger number of columns with 1 cape. First, we will tie a column without a cape in the same way, then we will tie a semicolumn and 7 columns with 1 cape. The first column with 1 cape, the second column with 1 cape, the third, fourth, fifth, sixth and 7th column with 1 cape. You can move them along the axis, then we will tie a half column, 1 cape on the hook, grab the loop and tie all 3 loops together and the column without a cape. We tie a connecting column between the petals, grab the loop and stretch it through the main loop. We will tie all the subsequent petals in the same way. They tied all the arches in this way. At the end they made an air loop and cut the thread, leaving a long tail, in order to sew a flower with this tail. I put a needle on this long ponytail. Now, on the opposite side, where 2 small petals were tied, we twist these petals, forming a flower. Here is such a flower turns out. And now, holding this twisted flower, we will sew the base. We wind up the needle so as to capture all the layers and just sew. We sewed this flower and this is the result of a cute little flower, a rose. Then we will tie the leaves for this flower. We perform the first loop. Now it is necessary to connect this loop with the base. We release the loop, start the hook from the wrong side and stretch this loop through this base. We perform 7 air loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We release the working loop, insert the hook into the base and stretch the working loop through the base. Seven more air loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In the same way, we release the loop. Here we have roughly divided visually into 3 parts, and in the third part we insert the hook into the base and stretch the loop in the same way. It turned out a base for 2 leaves. And now we will make the same base for the third leaf. We perform 7 air loops. We release the working loop, insert the hook into the base, into which the first loop has already been tied, and stretch the working loop through this base. We turn the knitting over to the front side, start the hook under the first arch, tie the column without a cape. Then we perform 1 cape on the hook, tie the floor column. Then we perform 1 cape on the hook, tie 4 columns with 1 cape. The first column with 1 cape, the second column with 1 cape, the third and fourth columns with 1 cape. Now we perform a peak of 4 air loops. For air loops, a connecting column in the base. Once again, 4 columns with 1 cape, the first column, the second column, the third and fourth column with 1 cape. Then we will tie a column and a column without a cape to the floor. This is how the first petal turns out, the first leaf. We move on to knitting the next leaf. In the next arch we will tie a column without a cape, and in the same way we will tie the next leaf. These 2 petals were tied in the same way. At the end they performed an air loop, the thread was cut off and the tails were filled. As a result, this is how this flower turns out. Small and cute. I thank you for your attention. I wish you all the best. Thank you very much for the warm, pleasant words in the comments. Thank you so much for your support. Let's knit together.